Hi guys, and welcome to this Saxcast tutorial on identifying the chords within a bar. Now we're going to cover a few things in this tutorial, and it's very important that you get your head around it because it's going to help out your playing a lot. It's going to help out your ability to improvise, your ability to even understand a little bit of music harmony and understand a little bit more about what's going on above a piece of music when you see the chords being written down. So what I want us to do first is have a look at the chords that are actually found within a certain key. So you'll notice the close-up here. I've done that deliberately so you can see all the chords at the side of my head, sort of floating somewhere around here in a second. Right then, so if we look at the chord of C major then, now what is a chord? So remember that a chord is just really the first note of a scale, the third note of a scale, and the fifth note of a scale. Now, a chord we generally refer to three notes being played at the same time, three notes or more. So if I took the C major chord here, so if I played the first of this chord here and played the first chord, the C major chord, I'd get this. That's all notes played together. You'll have heard it like this, and you'll have hopefully been playing it like this. We've been picking the notes out one by one, so playing the C, playing the E, and playing the G. And then we've been turning that into a little arpeggio exercise, so we've been going C, E, G, C, G, E, C. So you've been very much used to doing that kind of thing at the moment. You've been used to walking up this arpeggio. Now, what you're doing there really is outlining a chord, and I've mentioned this many times so far in this beginner's course. So it's all about outlining a chord. So what you can do is you've been practicing along, you've been going, right, C major, okay, C major, so I can do the scale, I can do the arpeggio. Now, the thing is, can you play it? Can you recognize it? Can you play it instantly as soon as you recognize it? So if you see it on a piece of paper or on a piece of music, can you go, all right, oh yeah, C major arpeggio, C major scale, and you're latching on to these things. So what happens is people practice their scales a lot. Some people not so much, maybe that's you, maybe it's not, but most people hopefully are practicing their scales quite, religiously. They're getting it into a little routine that they're built up, and they're just firing away through their scales. Now that's all well and good that you can fire through your scales, but what are scales? What is their purpose? Why are you doing it? Yeah, it's automatically going to get your fingers faster. But one of the things it's really going to help you with is be able to actually recognize a certain key or tonal center and then sort of assign that to your finger movement as well. So it's going to speed up your playing, it's going to speed up your reading, and then when it comes to improvisation, it goes, well, if you know your C major scale really well, then it's going to fit over a C major chord. There's my C major chord. It was absolutely fine. So there's my scale over the C major chord. So once you have a certain chord, you can guarantee that you can play pretty much all of the notes from that scale over that chord. So if you've got a C major chord, you can play the C major scale. If you've got a D minor chord, you can play the D minor scale. Harmonic form or melodic form. Actually, the mode actually works better over that one, I think. Sounds a bit jazzy. But the thing is, it's all about recognizing what chord you're in, what key you're in, and then what scales are you likely to come across, what set of sequence of notes are you likely to come across, and then also what are you likely to be able to play to improvise over that. So these are all fundamental concepts that you need to sort of have in your head as you're starting to go through this journey. Now, it's not a race. I don't want to just feed you all this information and get you to do it straight away, like I've seen a lot of places do around the internet. They say, well, improvising's easy, you've got to pick it up you just pick it up, you just do it, you use your ears, you use all this. Well, oh yeah, you just use this scale. Well, you can do it like that, but really, you're just going to use this scale, are you? I don't know. Is that going to work for you? You need to really know what works in moderation over various things. Build it up slowly. Don't just go into doing your Phrygian mode or the dominant in a certain key and all these fancy things. Start from the beginning, build up a nice base, and then expand into other keys. So back into the actual topic of the lesson, digressing a little bit there. So what I want to do here is just work my way through the chords within a bar within a particular key. So if I'm in C major here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build triads. A triad is just basically 1, 3, and 5. So it's the root note, 2 notes up, and 2 notes up again. And if I do that based on every single step of a scale, then this is what we come up with. So we come up with what we call chord 1. Often you'll see it written in Roman numerals like this. So chord 1, C, E, and G, C major. Chord 2, so I'm going to move up to the D now, have D as my root note. I'm going to play 1, 3, and 5, so I get D, F, and A. That's a D minor chord. Chord 2. Chord 3 is another minor chord. On E, we get G and B, E, G, and B, E minor. On chord 4, F, A, and C, F major. So you played that arpeggio quite a few times. Chord 5, G, B, and D, G major. Now, at the moment I'm doing just regular major chords, so 1, 3, and 5. If I were to put a 7th in there as well, so 1, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, that'd give me, well, a 7th chord on that particular note. So that is G7. Because I've got 3 notes within the actual scale, and then I've got my F. What kind of 7th is that? You should know this from the last few lessons in this stage. It's a dominant 7th. A dominant 7th in which key? So that is a dominant 7th in the key of C. There you go, G, B, D, and F natural. Moving on, chord 6, A, C, and E. What are those 3 notes from? You should know that minus arpeggio, A minor. A minor, chord 6. Chord 7, a dodgy one. Sounds interesting. It's actually a diminished. There's diminished, okay. We'll go on to diminished chords later on. That's not something I want to cover in this particular video, but chord 7 is always diminished. Okay, so those are the chords within a particular key, in this case a major key, and those chords are always the same. 1, 4, and 5 are always major, 2, 3, 6 are always minor, and 7 is always diminished in a major key. So that's taking just your key signature into effect, not adding any accidentals, and you can substitute chords out by adding accidentals. So you might change your G major into a G major 7 rather than a C dominant 7 by adding an F sharp in there. We'll come on to all this later on. Don't worry about it at the moment. I think it's just a bit too much information for this moment. But what I want you to understand from that is that in every key we have several chords that are incredibly common. These 7 chords also give you the option to play certain scales over them. These 7 chords are that frequently used that you'll recognise that certain scales are being played, certain notes are being used in familiar orders to you because you've been playing your scales. You'll notice arpeggios, you'll notice the regular scales, you'll notice chromatics. Let's play those chords through one more time. So we've got chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chord 7, and back to chord 1 again at the top if you so wished. So there again, one more time. 5, 7, 6, chord 7. Okay, so listen to those chords because they're very common in major keys and you'll hear them all sorts of times. But what I want you to be able to do eventually is listen to a backing track or whatever and go, oh yeah, it's chord 5. Chord 5, where's that like this go? Chord 1, ooh, chord 1. Right, so we can come back to certain places as well. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually start identifying chords, or the common chords within the key. So if we take this little excerpt here, we've got 2 bars of music. What I want us to have a go at doing is see if we can identify which chords you think will be used within this actual piece. So which chords will be going on in the background, which chords do you think will be being used, and can you recognize any sort of notes from particular chords in order to identify which chords are going on here. So what we got? We've got a C. This is our little tune. There's our tune. Okay, so what we're going to do here is think about what chords are probably going to go well and fit with those particular notes. Now, when I've got C, E, and G, I know in particular that C is going to work quite nicely. I know E is going to work quite nicely because these are all notes within the chord. G, is also going to work quite nicely. Well, what about a D? What do you think? Does it work? Does it not work? Is it interesting? Is it colourful? Now, I don't want you to think of notes really as either sounding horrible or not working as such. I'd like you to think of them more as an ingredient into a meal. So I've got my C major chord there. I add a C to it. Well, that works. Yeah? I add a D. You know, maybe that's like adding a few more chilies to a curry, perhaps. You know, do you like your curry spicy? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But that's more of the idea of what I'm wanting to think about. Rather than it being a wrong note, it's not really a wrong note, it's just maybe that sounds clashier than that one. Maybe that sounds more consonant than that one, as that one's a little bit more dissonant. Yeah? So don't think about these as wrong notes, just different colours, because what you're trying to do when you improvise, what are pieces of music trying to do? They're trying to entertain you. They want to get moments where you're going to go, ooh, that sounds interesting. That's piqued my interest. If I just play all those notes, this is not going anywhere. I'll put it in. Now, it all worked, but it wasn't the most groundbreaking of pieces. So pieces of music are going to put different colours in there. You know, so it just makes a different sort of sound, doesn't it? It's a different kind of flavour. So C works really well. D, well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. E, so the third note of that's in there, isn't it? That works. F, maybe doesn't work so well. G, that's in there as well. A, does that work? B, does that work? Okay, so we know that if I've got a tune there, if it's got a C in it, an E in it, and a G anywhere in it, then what would be the best chord to use? And this is really the crux of this matter. What chord is best to use over a certain tune? So in that little first bar there, we've got a C, a D. Well, that's not in. What chord's that in? Well, it's in chord 2. We've got an E. What chord's that in? And then we've got G. So if you notice there, the C, the E and the G all belong to the chord of C major. So the most logical choice there of chord would be C major, because we've only got one note that doesn't belong to it. So the C works, the E works, and the G works. The D is going to act as what we call a passing note. So it's a note that passes, we literally pass through it on our way to another, what we call a harmony note. So a harmony note is a note that belongs to the chord in which has been played over the top. So we've got a C major in the background. The C is a harmony note, the E would be a harmony note, and the G would be a harmony note. But the D would be a passing note, and that gives us a little bit of dissonance. C, D. So the most obvious choice there would be chord 1. So we've got a C in there, we've got an E in there, and we've got a G in there. So that would be chord 1 over that bar, most likely. Maybe you could change it and put a different chord over there. You could alternate it. But really, what other options do we have? I suppose we could have chord 5. Why? Well, because we've got a G and a D in there. So if we've got a G and a D, that's part of G major. So we could have... It doesn't work quite so well if I put G major chord underneath that though. That's very clashy. That works nicely. That's also quite clashy. And even the G that's in the G major chord that I'm playing underneath there sounds a little bit clashy. Can you hear that? It still sounds a little bit clashy because it hasn't really been prepared. So personally, my choice there would be, I think C major works nicer. Now, this is kind of personal preference, but what we're trying to find out is which chord would actually be more likely to be played over the top. So what have we got there? Well, we've got a C, a D and an E. So we can see that that's part of our C major scale. Moving on to the next chord then, which chord would be best used there? What have we got? So the next 4 notes are an A, F, E, C. Now rather than stay with the same chord, it'd be nice to use another chord, a different chord from the same key. We'll stay in the same key because, well, it sounds nice. But which chord would be best used? So which note chords out of these can you see that has an A, an F, an E, and a C? So which chord contains the most notes there? Let's have a look. So C major has a C, an E and a G. Well, we have a C and an E at the end, but that doesn't take into account the A and the F. D, F and A, so chord 2. Well, I've only got one of those notes, so I've got, well, the F and the A at the beginning. Kind of works. Kind of works. So that's an option. Chord 2, we could possibly use chord 2 there. Chord 3, we've got E, E, G, B. Well, there's only an E in there, so if you use chord 3, now that sounds really clashy. Maybe that floats your boat, maybe it doesn't. Chord 4, F, A and C. Well, I think we've hit the note jackpot there because we've got 3 notes that belong to the chord of F. Both of those notes sound great. E is not in there, but look, it still sounds quite nice. I quite like that. Personally, again, my preference, I like that. Then goes to the C, which is also in that key. That sounds quite nice. So to me, that's a winner. I like that chord, so I'd probably use F major there, so chord 4. And the E has a nice effect of making that into a major 7. If I was to stack F major up and put an E on the top, F, A, C, you get that kind of sound. Quite a nice chord, major chord, very jazzy. So if I had that underneath, if I put an F7 over there, then I can go back to chord with the C. Best choice, last note of the chord, always comes back to the home key, so I'm going back to the C major again. Okay, so that's probably the best choice there. So my chords would be chord 1, so C major, chord 4, back to chord 1. So we can identify those chords as being C major because of the C and the E and the G in those first 4 notes. The second chord in the box, we have more than one chord per bar. F, we've got an F in there, we've got an A and a C. Well, they're the 3 notes out of F major. The E actually happens to turn it into an F7, so that's part of chord substitution, which is another thing I'll go into later. We can change the chord into something else by adding certain notes, and chord 1 to finish on, which pieces generally do. They always finish on chord 1 because otherwise the piece doesn't sound finished. Sometimes if you hear a piece sort of fade out, which you're getting a lot of pop tunes and things, often it doesn't come back to chord 1, so it never feels quite finished, so they can't think about a big chord finish on, so they just go round and round and round and round and fade until you're done. So let's move on. So we're going to get the chords in G major. I'll snap through this really quickly because I'm aware I've been talking quite a while about these chords, but I really wanted to get the importance of this lesson over to you and just talk a few things through. So we're on to the scale of G major. There's the scale of G major. The chords are exactly the same. Look at this, the chords are exactly the same, just starting in different places. So we've got a G major chord, chord 1, chord 2, A minor, chord 3, B minor, chord 4, C major, chord 5, F major with the 7th if you wish. Very common, that's why I put the 7th in there because you come across it all the time. 5, 7, chord 6, E minor, and 7. We've got that diminished chord again, which we'll just pretend doesn't exist for now. Alright, okay, so going through that then, we've got this little tune come up here. So this tune is... Okay, so what are my options then? Well, I've got a G. I'm looking at sort of 2 groups of notes there. I'm thinking we've got 3 chords again. So we got that going down. So what chord would be best chosen there? Well, we've got a G, A. That's not making a chord for me, so I'm going to ignore the A. The B, well, G, B, and the D. G, B, D, which one's that? Well, probably most likely a chord 1. And does it sound nice? Yeah, it does. So those 4 notes could be used over a G major chord. Which note doesn't belong? Well, the A doesn't belong in there, but it's nice in passing. See how it wants to move? It's got this bit of tension, sort of moving you on. Tension, move on. Up to the D. Then we've got G, A, G, F sharp, G. Okay, so G, A, G, F sharp. Okay, so which chords have got certain notes in there? So chord 1 has got the G's in, but you don't stay in chord 1 all the time because it sounds boring. Bit boring, isn't it? So I want to really change to a different chord if I can. So A, C, and E, well, one of those notes belongs to the A, C, and E chord, but the rest don't, so maybe that's going to sound a little bit weird. Sounds a little bit strange. So I think 2's probably out of the question. Chord 3, I've only got the F sharp there. Probably not the best of choices. C, G. That actually works, doesn't it? Although I've got 2 notes that are quite clashy. Chord 4 would actually work there. I could use C major. I've got an option there, C major. Or chord 5, so my D, F sharp, A and C. Well, what notes would I have there? I've got the A's in there and an F sharp, so I've got 2 out of the 4 belonging to it. The G doesn't belong, but maybe we can try and see what that sounds like. Now that's quite a strong finish. That gives us a 5-1 finish, very common. Call it perfect cadence 5-1. Perfect cadence if you look up classical harmony and things like that. But jazzers, you know, we're just going to call it 5-1, so it ends on 5 and 1. Chord 5 going to 1. 5-1. So that G doesn't work too much, but the A really works. That doesn't work too much. It's got a pull, it's going to pull in. Where's it going to go to? Yes, that's a really good chord. So probably the next chords that we're going to choose there are chord 1, which is G major, chord 5, 7. Have a little bit of clashiness with a little bit of resolution, and then it moves it straight up to the F sharp's already in there, the A's already in there, F sharp's moving as nicely to a G major chord. Well, it's finishing on a long note, so may as well have my G major chord there. Alright guys, so I'm going to leave it there. So what I want you to do now is have a go at playing through some of your music and seeing if you can identify which chord would best fit within those pieces of music. So look for things like arpeggio patterns. Is there a C, is there an E, is there a G in there? Like there is wherever in these. Is there scale patterns? Is it a particular scale? If it's the first 5 notes of a scale, then well, you can pretty much guarantee that the first chord of that scale will work. So if it's C, if you've got C, D, E, F there, well, C, D, E, C and E, well, that's both in there. Just like in that first exercise that we did. So that's how you identify a chord. You're looking for this best fit, which chord would best fit, and that'll give you a good indication of what notes are going to be used when you think about it the other way around. So if you see a C major chord, then well, you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be a lot of C's, E's and probably G's in it, and if you wanted to improvise, you could use those 3 notes because they're going to sound good. You can also use notes from that scale because they'll add a little bit of different colour. Okay, so any questions, comments, discussions, whatever you like, put them down in the discuss form before, and I'll catch you in the next lesson. Thanks very much for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.